Okay, on this type of question, here is really what you need to know. You've got to be able to figure out which one is growing and which one is shrinking, and then the domain and range. So this one is going to be the growing one, because if you look at a table, so if you just plug some numbers in for x, if I plug 1 in place of x, that's going to be 4 times 2 to the 1, and that's just going to be, if you plug 1 in, it's going to give you an 8. And if you plug a 2 in place of x, that's going to be 4 times 2 squared. So you got to do exponents first. That's the same as 4 times 4, and that is 16. So the further we go with our numbers, the bigger they're going to get. So 8 turned into a 16. 3, that is going to be 4 times 2 cubed. So that's 4 times 2 times 2 times 2. That's 4 times 8, and that's 32. So this one is going to grow pretty fast. So you're going to have a dot 1 on 8 right there. You're going to have a dot over 2 up 16, over 3 up 32. It's going to look something like this. Okay, now this is the important part. It is never ever going to drop down below 0. It is never going to turn into a negative number. It's always going to stay positive. So let's talk about the domain and the range. The domain is the left and right. So if these arrows keep going on forever, I'm just going to keep growing and growing. It is going to go forever left, and it's going to go forever right. So it's going to go all the way from a negative infinity to a positive infinity, hugged with parentheses. The range, up and down. Okay, up, it's going to never end. It's going to go all the way up forever. But down, it is going to get closer and closer and closer and closer to 0. It's never going to get at 0, and it's never going to go below 0. So we're going to put 0 to infinity. And there we go. Because look, here is the number one thing we want you to catch. So look at my table. If I keep going backwards, so it looks like you're just doubling, times by 2, times by 2. So if I go backwards, I divide that by 2, that's going to be 4. Divide that by 2, that's going to be 1. Divide that by 2, that's 1. If I cut that in half, it's going to be a half. If I cut that in half, it's going to be a fourth. So if you look at it on the number line, here's 0, and like here's 1. If we cut 1 in half, now we're at half. If we cut that in half, we're at a quarter. If we cut that in half, you're just going to get closer and closer and closer and closer to 0, but you will never ever touch or go to the left of 0. So this one right here is our decay, and the dead hint giveaway is that it is a fraction, because if I have 1/3 to the second power, that's 1/3 times 1/3, that's equal to 1/9. If I have 1/3 cubed, that's 1/3 times 1/3 times 1/3, that's 1/27. So the bigger my numbers are, so if I plug in a 2 here, I got 1/9. If I plugged in a 3, I got 1/27. If I plugged in a 4, so the bigger number I plug in on the x, the smaller my number gets here. It's going to be like 81. So if I go over 2, I'm going to go up a 9th. If I go over 3, I'm going to go up a 27th. If I go over 4, up an 81th. So it's going to look like this. The further I go to the right, the smaller and smaller it gets, the closer it gets to 0. So the domain and range, the domain is going to be the same. As far as left and right, these arrows are going to go forever in both directions. So it's going to go all the way to negative infinity to a positive infinity. Parentheses, the range, kind of the same thing. As high as it goes is infinity, but as low as it goes, it gets closer and closer to 0. So 0 and infinity. Solve for P. Show its solutions on a number line. Okay, get everything on the exact same side. So I'm going to plus 9p, I'm going to add 9p. So I got negative 5p squared minus 10p plus 5 equals negative 11p squared. Add 11p squared, add 11p squared. And now if I total everything up, I should have 6p squared, a negative 10p, and a plus 5. Okay, quadratic formula. So A, B, and C. A is 6, B is negative 10, I forgot my P, negative 10, and C is 5. So now if I plug it into the quadratic formula, it's going to be x equals negative b. So it's going to be negative 10, because 10 is already negative, plus or minus the square root. Put this in parentheses, b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay, now this is going to clean up to give you 10 plus or minus the square root of, if I put all this in the calculator, so I'm going to go parentheses, negative 10 squared minus 4 times 6 times 5, negative 20, and on the bottom I got 12. The negative 20 is going to be an imaginary number, so take that out. So it's going to be 10 plus or minus an imaginary times the square root of 20 over 12. And then your next move is, let's pull some stuff out of square root of 20. 20, if you break it down to its prime factors, if I go 4 times 5 and I go 2 times 2 times 5, so I'm going to trade it for 2 squared times 5. So I'm going to pull a 2 out and 5 stays in. So you're going to trade 20 for 2 times the square root of 5. So your next move is going to be 10 plus or minus 2i times the square root of 5 over 12. And then you can clean this fraction up, because 10 and 12 and 2 and 12 can all be divided by 2. They're all even, so divide them all by 2. So 10 is going to change to a 5, 2 is going to change to a 1, and on bottom 2 is going to change to a 1. So this is the final and very best answer. Okay. Let's not worry about showing it on a number line. Okay, now you're going backwards. The answers, or the roots, are 5 and negative 3. So what equation gives you those two answers, 5 and negative 3? Those are nice answers because they're integers. So if your answer is going to be 5, here is what I know. I am going to plug 5 in right here in place of x, and I want to end up at a 0. So I'm going to write x subtract 5, because if I plug in a 5, then it's going to be 5 subtract 5, and that is 0, and 0 times anything is going to give me 0, and this is what I want. I want to end up at 0. Okay, negative 3, if I plug negative 3 in, for x right there, I'm going to turn around and add 3. Because I know if I put negative 3, add 3, there's my 0. The target is 0. I want to end up at 0. So if I've got these guys to work with, I'm going to work forward. I'm going to do the distributive property. X times x is x squared. X times 3 is 3x. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x. Negative 5 times 3 is negative 15 equals 0. So you've got x squared minus 2x minus 15 is 0. And that is your answer. Last one. Nope, not the last one. We've got a couple more. Here's what they want you to do. They want you to take a negative 1 and first substitute it into h. So this is h right here. So it's going to be 2, not times x, but times negative 1. You're going to replace x with negative 1. Subtract 2. So this is going to be negative 2. Subtract 2, negative 4. Okay, now take negative 4 and sub that into g, it needs to go 2 spots. It's going to go -4 cubed minus 2 times -4 squared. If you type that in just like it is on your calculator with the parentheses, everything just like you got it, you'll get it right. So -4 cubed minus 2 times -4 squared, and you should end up -96. 13. They want you to take 9 and substitute it in place of F. So there's 2 lines here. F is the blue line, the dotted line. So you're going to start here at 0, 0. And I'm going to go 9 to the right. I'm going to end up right here. Now I need to touch the line they want, and they want you to touch the F line, so I'm going to go up right here. And the question is, how far did you have to go up to touch that line? And I had to go up 3 units. So now you're going to take this 3 and you're going to plug it in to G. So start back at 0, 0, go back to 0, 0. G is now the red line. So it's 3, so I'm going to go 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3. This time I have to go down. And I had to go down 2 times. So this is my new answer, -2. But I need to plug it in one more time to G. So you always start back at 0, 0. -2 is 2 to the left. Go down to hit G. I had to go down maybe like 1.75 or something. And that is where I ended up. That's my answer. Write an equation to match this graph. Okay, your vertex is what you want to find. Your vertex is right there, the center where it turns around and starts heading the other way. Your vertex, I went 3 to the right and down 1. So I went over 3 and down 1. And if I know the vertex, I can use vertex form. The vertex form is going to be y equals parentheses squared x right there. And here's my number 1 move. I know that this opens down, so it's going to be a negative out in front. Next, in the parentheses is what tells you to go left or right. I went 3 to the right. So it's going to be backwards of what you think. It's not going to be +3. It's going to be -3. Okay, now I went down 1. And that is what your intuition tells you. So this number right here moves up or down. If positive, then up. If negative, then down. So if you can make some notes, let me go over right here. This number moves right or left. If it's positive, then it's going to move it left. If it's negative, then it goes right. And then this guy right here, if negative, then it's going to open down. If it's positive, then it's going to open up. And that is it.